What is going on, Trash Talkers? We're back with another episode for you. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the biggest steals and the best players who ended up falling during day 2 of the NFL draft. All that and much more coming your way right now! All right, Nick. Well, day 2 had a lot of ups and downs, twists and turns, and frankly, a lot of surprises. You know, we were happy, we were sad, we were shocked. I think we went through the gambit when it came to all of the emotions that you can talk about. But I want to start off with some of the biggest steals that we saw during day 2, rounds 2 and 3.
Yeah, for me, it really starts with Ronnie Perkins, the guy who slid the absolute furthest. He fell all the way to the Patriots at the end of the 3rd round, a guy who some people had projected in the 1st round of this draft. He has a ton of talent, a lot of things that pop off on tape. You really see him getting off the edge extremely fast, just like a lot of the top edge rushers we saw early on. Kwity Paye, Azeez Ojulari, he was in the conversation with those guys. He falls all the way to the Patriots at 96. He's an absolutely special player that was a massive steal for the Patriots and a guy that we'll be seeing a lot next season.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of the players that we talked about going into the 2nd round that were still available. And I start off with Trayvon Merrick. And not only was Trayvon Merrick sliding a bit, but in fact, he was the 3rd safety taken off the board. Not just the 3rd safety. He had to wait to hear 2 other guys that don't even compare to this guy. I mean, Trayvon Merrick was by far and away ranked the number 1 safety, but we soon found out that he had some back issues, he had some injury concerns, and his back actually tightened up during his pro day, and a lot of teams got scared off by that. I don't understand why they wouldn't take the best player, even if he had a little back spasm issue. Nonetheless, he ended up falling, and at this point, the Las Vegas Raiders got an absolute steal.
Now, a huge wide receiver that fell from all the way from potentially 1st round to back end of the 2nd round, Terrace Marshall Jr., the big-bodied wide receiver out of LSU. He fell all the way to the back of the 2nd round, had a lot of different wide receivers taken before him. Elijah Moore was taken ahead of him, Rondale Moore, Dyami Brown. These guys were taken before a guy who's a proven winner, who's been to the biggest of games and performed on the biggest of stages and competed against the best of the best for multiple years and been at the top of his game. And he falls all this way. It's just unbelievable to see a guy like that fall. But he's definitely going to somewhere he is going to thrive, and that's in Carolina. Now he has Sam Darnold throwing the ball with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. This is going to be a very good trio for Sam Darnold.
I was very upset when I heard Terrace Marshall's name called, just because I love this guy so much. I think that he was one of the best receivers that we had in this draft class, and he was being overshadowed by Jamar Chase's stature. But make no mistake, Terrace Marshall Jr. is an absolute stud, and he's going to show it. Now, I want to talk about the final player that we have for the biggest steal, and that was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. This guy kept falling and falling, just like these other guys did, and ended up going to the absolute best place. In fact, I thought this team should have taken him in the 1st round, and they didn't. But they end up getting him in the 2nd round, and that's the Cleveland Browns. They get Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who is arguably one of the best inside linebackers that this draft has to offer. He's extremely long, extremely fast, extremely quick. He can play coverage. He can rush the passer. He can literally do everything you ask linebackers to do. So for the idea that he was falling and not being selected is a real head scratcher. And in fact, when we saw him, when they took a look at the quote unquote fam cam in his home when he got drafted by the Browns, you could see how angry he was about how far he had fallen. He was projected middle of the first round talent, and he's being selected in the by the end of the second round. Not a good look for these teams, but the Cleveland Browns absolutely get a steal.
Yeah, these were absolute steals on day two, but there are still a bunch of big names available for day three. And moving into day three, these are the names you should be looking out for. It all starts with Jabriel Cox, the inside linebacker out of LSU. This guy was the heart and soul of that defense. He took over after Patrick Queen was drafted in the first round of last year, and these two were pretty much identical over the last couple of years. You really saw them flourish together, and you saw Patrick Queen really flourish in the NFL. I have no doubt in my mind Jabril Cox is going to be one of the best inside linebackers in the league in the next few years. I think he is an absolute steal and the biggest name to look out for on day three.
Yeah, I'll raise you Thailand Wallace, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma State, and I believe that Thailand Wallace has gotten a bad rap just because he didn't play against the biggest names and he's a bit smaller. But when you take a look, and Pro Football Focus actually put this out, Thailand Wallace was one of the best receivers on the outside over some of the other players that we saw go early in the first round. Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Rashad Bateman. He was ahead of all of them in outside wide receiver rankings. So Tylan Wallace is a huge name still on this board that one team is going to thrive with when he gets selected.
Now, when it comes to running backs, the biggest name to look out for, Michael Carter out of North Carolina. His running mate, Javonte Williams, was drafted early on day two, and he is compared to Nick Chubb, his running mate from Georgia, Sony Michel. So when you look at Michael Carter, Javonte Williams' running partner, and they're saying Javonte Williams is Nick Chubb, we can look at Michael Carter and say maybe he's a lot like Sony Michel. And if Sony Michel was a first round pick and he's now going into the fourth round, possibly even later, you're getting an absolute stud at running back for a very cheap price. So this is a huge win for whoever can pick him up.
And finally, the last player that I want to highlight here that is available going into day three is Shaun Wade, the cornerback coming out of the Ohio State University. Shaun Wade was actually projected as a first round talent, and then he started to slip a bit, and then he had some issues that really didn't look good on film. And when you put him up against J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain II and Asante Samuel Jr., even there was a whole range of corners that were in between these guys, and they all stacked up better on film. But what this guy brings in measurables, he's going to be able to bring to your team. He just needs the coaching. And I'm not here to fault the Ohio State coaching staff by any stretch of the imagination, but I believe that he needs a hard nosed, defensive minded coach to really hone him in, because I believe that when you take a look at his raw skill set, he's going to be one of the best corners that the NFL has to offer if he can unlock his full potential. All right, well, that's going to do it for now. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. We go live every single day. That'll be all. Peace and love.